road, but a catalyst for change in a society is usually persona non grata with those who have been the beneficiaries of the system.
Today on The Record, we're diving deep into the contentious battle over reproductive rights heating up in Florida, with President Joe Biden hitting the trail, stopping in Tampa just days before a new 6-week abortion ban takes effect. The stakes are high as the November election approaches, and literally lives are at risk. Joining us today to unpack this critical issue is Katie Keith. She is the White House Deputy Director of the Gender Policy Council. Katie, thank you for joining American Urban Radio Networks.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Set the scene for us with President Biden in Florida in light of this looming 6-week abortion ban.
Yeah, so the president is headed to Florida today ahead of, there's currently a dangerous and extreme abortion ban in effect in Florida. And next week, as you mentioned, there will be an even more dangerous and extreme abortion ban going into effect that will prohibit healthcare even before many women in the state know that they're pregnant. Florida has been, even with their current abortion ban, an important option for women all across the South to access the reproductive health care that they need. And so we're very concerned about what we expect to be just the devastating impact of this new law going into effect, where you just have tens of millions of women who are going to be impacted. This is also coming at a time, of course, where we have 21 states with abortion bans currently in effect. We are seeing women in emergency situations be turned away from emergency medical rooms. Women are already being forced to travel hundreds of miles for care. And I think with this shift again in Florida, all of this is just going to become even more consequential. And these are all just examples of the types of restrictions and limits and sort of the extreme agenda we're seeing from Republican elected officials all across the country, including in Florida, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade.
So with those who may be listening and they are, this includes women who want to have children and women who don't want to have children, right? Who are affected. And we see women who've been dying trying to get the help that they need, trying to access the care that they need, doctors being scared to help those who are coming in, people literally dying in emergency rooms. What is the message? How is the president messaging this to the American people to show the urgency of this?
Yeah, we have been very, very clear. And I would say, even stepping back, reproductive freedom has been a priority for the Biden-Harris administration since day one of the administration. And of course, our work only increased after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. The president has signed now 3 executive orders, 1 presidential memorandum, and we're focused on everything we can do as a federal government. So ensuring access to emergency medical care where we can, strengthening access to medication abortion, a medication that was approved by the FDA more than 20 years ago that we're still fighting about now, and is the way that more than half of women choose to terminate their pregnancy. We're increasing access to affordable contraception, which has become even more important with restrictions on abortion access. And even yesterday, you saw the Department of Health and Human Services put out a new rule to strengthen privacy protections for patients and providers to really cover the entire scope of lawful reproductive health care. So we're doing everything we can as an administration, as a federal government. We are also continuing to call on Congress to restore the protections of Roe versus Wade in federal law. The president has been extremely clear about that since the day of the Dobbs decision, that is the only way we're going to restore the rights for women in every state across the country is for federal law to have these protections put back in place. And so we're continuing to fight for that. And then I would say, your question about how we're talking about this, how the president, vice president are talking about this, we want to make really clear that it's what you said, women's health and lives are at risk. This is about healthcare. This is about, a woman's right to choose when and whether she has a pregnancy, when and whether she can access IVF, as we saw in Alabama with threats to care there. And so we have been and will continue to really elevate the stories of what this means for women all across the country. So at the State of the Union address, the president mentioned, a Texas mother of two, Kate Cox, who had to go to court for the first time since Roe was put in place to sue, to ask for permission to get the care that she and her doctor knew that she needed. And she was still even ultimately forced to travel. We're also talking to, women in Alabama who were affected by the Supreme Court decision there that disrupted access to IVF for families desperate to grow their family. And we're just seeing all these repercussions all across the board. So to us, this is about, standing with women, standing with families, standing with providers who are offering this evidence-based care. And that's what you'll continue to hear from us.
Let me just ask you quickly, for Black and brown women, the numbers are even more stark when we're talking about mortality rates, when we're talking about access to reproductive care. The fight is even deeper for Black women in particular. How is the administration engaging with advocacy groups and the public to shape some of the policies for reproductive rights?
Yeah, we have been focused. Thank you for that question. It's incredibly important, and everything you said is exactly right. We are paying attention to those disproportionate impacts and everything that you said, and we're deeply concerned. And the vice president, in particular, I think speaks so well to this, that the states with even some of the most extreme abortion bans are the states that do the worst on maternal health outcomes. And so, to us, that is no surprise that we need to be thinking about access to comprehensive maternal health care, reproductive right. This is a crisis that we've been sort of focused on since the beginning, but everything that we are seeing in states across the country to attack reproductive health care access, it's causing, maternal fetal physician specialists to leave. It's worsening, exacerbating this maternal health crisis that we're seeing that, as you mentioned, just has had already horrific impacts on Black and brown women.
You're seeing where people step back kind of from the profession of that specific field because of everything?
Absolutely. So we're seeing, and some of the data is still sort of early, right? But we're seeing the next generation of residents, people who would train as a physician, choosing not to go to states that really need the help and really need, have a physician shortage, but saying, I'm not going to get the training there that I need to really to provide emergency medical care and a reproductive health care emergency. So I'm choosing not to go to that state. Or doctors who, because they can't, provide the care that they were trained to provide because of state abortion bans, choose to actually leave that state and move their family to a state where they can practice medicine in the way that they were trained to do. And so all of that we're seeing just really makes the existing maternal health care crisis that we already had a lot worse.
Well, Katie, I know you have to leave, but lastly, in your role as the Gender Policy Council, how do you see these developments affecting even more policy decisions moving forward? Some are saying we don't see, on the right, it doesn't seem like Congress is going to be able to do anything. We see, we have the striking down of Roe versus Wade. For those who are like, what is the outlook for this, and who are scared?
I think you said this. The stakes are really, really high. So this is the fight we will continue to have, led by the president and vice president, but really all across the Biden-Harris administration. And what I would add is every time we have seen reproductive freedom at the ballot box put to the voters directly, voters have voted in favor of reproductive rights. And so that we know that we are where the vast majority of Americans are who support the right to choose. And it is about all of us, I think, fighting together to restore these protections that were lost.
Katie Keith, White House Deputy Director of the Gender Policy Council. Thank you so much for coming on AURN, and love to come back and continue the conversation and see how this shapes up over the next few months, because just like we said before, lives are literally at stake.
Would love that. Thank you so much, Ebony.
Thank you.